Okay, today's lesson is about absolute values. And hopefully I won't screw things up. This is my first time using this software. So there's how you spell it. And we'll go through some examples and some symbols. All right, well, here is the symbol. We use two vertical sticks. In between it, we put like a variable, or you could put a number, or you could put an expression. And we'll go through some examples of that. The meaning of this particular concept is distance. How far is something from 0? Now the implication here is that it must be greater than or equal to 0 because negative distance doesn't exist. So for our first example, the absolute value of -5 is, again, asking ourselves, what is the distance from 0? And so the distance would be 5. Sometimes they're going to give you an expression inside, such as 6 minus 13. And so that we have to do first before we consider the absolute value. In this case, we get absolute value of -7, which again, how far is that from 0? 7 units. Be careful when they put a negative sign on the outside like that. This implies how far is pi from 0, but then make your answer negative. And so in this case, pi is exactly pi from 0, which is approximately 3.14. And then it said make it negative, or make it the opposite of that. And then in example D, we have an expression that is 27 divided by -3. And so doing the math there, we do the division. 27 divided by -3 is 9. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. So again, how far is -9 from 0? 9 units. All right, now we come to examples with variables. And now we have an equation as well. There are two problems that we need to solve here because remember, we don't know what x is because it's an unknown variable. So in asking what is the absolute value of that, we have to consider two possibilities. Either it is what we think it is, what we see, or it is the opposite of what we see. Meaning, could x be 6? Yes. Could x be the opposite of 6? Yes. And so this is what I consider to be the easy problem, and this is the tricky problem. Don't forget, we need to solve this side for x, and so we got to get rid of that -x. Multiplying both sides by -1, we get x equals -6. So my solution is x equals 6 or x equals -6. And we'll do a few more tough ones like this. Okay, example F. Here we have the absolute value, which again means the distance equal to -12. If you're thinking here, that negative sign there presents a problem because the distance cannot be a negative number. So for this problem here, we get no solution. Now if you forget and you do end up solving this problem, again, here's the easy answer. Here's the tricky answer. Again, you can solve both these problems. The left side is done, the right side is not. So I multiply both sides and I get 12. Notice that when we check these answers and I plug -12 in and I say the absolute value of -12 is not -12, nor is the absolute value of 12 equal to -12. And so that's why we have to stick with this no solution because of that negative sign. Example G. Here we see that the right side has a little bit of arithmetic to do. I also see a negative in front there. That worries me a little bit. Okay, well, let's do the arithmetic. And 2 minus 10 is negative 8. And again, I do see a negative on the right side, and we know that distance cannot be negative, but this problem here also has a negative on the left side, which would indicate that, these two negatives actually will end up canceling each other because they're on the outside. So, multiplying both sides by -1 gives me 8. Again, we have two problems here. There's the easy problem, x equals 8, or x equals -x equals 8. Solving the right side, x equals -8, or x equals 8. Again, if I check my answers here, and I say, okay, what is the absolute value of -8? What is the absolute value of 8? Make it negative, you get -8. And sure enough, 2 minus 10 does equal -8. Yes, and again, checking -8, we get the same result. 2 minus 10 again is -8. And the absolute value of -8 is 8. So notice how this checks out both ways. Two more examples here. Letter H. We have an algebra equation, but this time the inside of my algebra equation of the absolute value has a little bit of an expression in there. So again, we take both problems. We take the easy problem, which is 21 equals to x minus 4, or the tricky problem is 21 is equal to the opposite of what's in there. Notice how I used parentheses around this to make sure that when I make it negative, like we did up in the previous problems, I distribute it to both sides. So I'm going to do the right side first, and we get -x plus 4. Solving that for x, we subtract 4 from both sides, and I get x equal to -17. In this problem here, again, we add 4 to both sides, and we get x is equal to 25. So again, we have these two solutions of 25 and 17. I forgot to check those two problems there, answers. 21 is equal to the absolute value of 25 minus 4. And sure enough, 21 is equal to the absolute value of 21. So that checks out. Again, 21 is equal to the absolute value of -17 minus 4. And -17 minus 4 is also -21. And the absolute value of that is 21. So our last problem. We have the absolute value of 3x minus 6, so the distance. Subtract 9 from that is equal to -3. The first thing we're going to do is clean up the right side of the problem, because this -9 needs to be kind of eliminated and moved to this side of the equation, because all we want left over is this absolute value part. All right, here we go. Adding 9 to both sides to get rid of that. We get 6, and the absolute value of 3x minus 6. A lot of possibilities here, dangerous possibilities. Don't dive into the middle of an absolute value. Always, again, write the two parts. Write the obvious part, and then write the tricky part. Okay, so the easy one. 3x minus 6 equals 6. So we're seeing what we see there. Again, the tricky part is the opposite of what we see. And so I'm going to take the opposite of 3x minus 6 and set that equal to 6. Now solve both of these problems. Add 6 to both sides. And you get 3x equals 12. Dividing by 3, we get x equals 4. In this case here, I distribute the negative sign through, and I get -3x plus 6 equals 0, 6. Subtracting 6 from both sides, we get 3x equals 0. Negative 3x divided by 3, negative 3. We get 0 divided by negative 3 is 0. So I have two solutions, x equals 4 or x equals 0.